Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our podcast. This is our third episode of our podcast where we talk about healthy relationship. In the previous podcast, we have talked about the main ingredients or how to maintain a healthy relationship. If you haven't watched the episode, you can watch that episode first. Okay. So for this episode, what are we going to talk about, Grace?
Okay, as the last episode, we have talked about that individual differences is really fine in the relationship, right? In the
Mm.
healthy relationship, there are so many types of conflicts, but it's also strengthen our relationship. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, in addressing that, we see that each people brings unique traits, preferences, right,
Yeah.
and background to the relationship. In your experience or your related research, are there any connection between individual differences and healthy relationship?
Certainly, there's a kind of the ideal relationship that has all the ingredients of a well-functioning relationship.
Yeah.
But as we all know, some people seem to be simply better at maintaining a healthy relationship than other people, and some people may even go from one bad relationship to the other bad relationship. Now, why is that the case? And then you can indeed look at individual differences.
Yeah.
And I think, at least three of them come to mind that have direct relevance to my own research. Also, is that the first one has to do with the effort that people really have to put in a relationship that we already talked about in the previous episode. Some people simply find it are better skilled at putting effort in a relationship, and those are the people with good self-control and good self-regulation is the term that is very often used. So simply the ability that people very strongly differ in the some people are better able to have control over their impulses and instead behave in line with long-term goals, and that can be a long-term relationship goal. So if you want to stay in a relationship, you're very committed to a relationship with friends or with a romantic partner. Self-control means being able to really inhibit and downplay your impulses that might be destructive to the relationship, and then inhibit that impulse. For example, an impulse to aggress, or an impulse that we talked about last week. Maybe your partner comes home, is very grumpy to you. Maybe the impulse is to act very grumpy in return. Realizing this and then being able to inhibit that impulse and to instead say, "Hey, maybe my partner had a bad day. Can you tell me what's going on?" So that really requires self-regulation, and this is one individual difference factor that has a huge impact on whether people can maintain healthy relationships.
Okay, it means that we have to have the adaptive self-regulation to what we're facing in a relationship too. And I'm curious about how to build or how to have an adaptive self-regulation.
Well,
because we tend to have a reactive, a reactive action, right, to what have come to us. Do you have any suggestion or tips about how to cultivate a good self-regulation?
Well, maybe I'm not sure whether I have a very good tips to promote self-regulation. I think this is actually a debate in the literature. Can we really train self-regulation in people? It seems studies are not very successful at doing so. So it seems almost like the way we are wired. We are genetically born with a certain type of self-regulation. There's also childhood experiences and the way you were raised, etc., that contribute to self-regulation.
It's a nature-nurture.
It's a nature. It's definitely a nature-nurture individual difference. But there have been training programs to improve self-regulation, and not always successful. And so that is somewhat difficult. Now then you may wonder, okay, if I'm low in self-control, am I then doomed to have bad relationships? That's maybe there are some listeners who believe, I'm low in self-regulation. Will I always have bad relationships? Now, one thing that I believe is very promising, might be very promising, is mindfulness. And mindfulness is something. Mindfulness is basically what it means is to be aware of your current moment experiences. And respond to those experiences with an accepting attitude. So whatever there is currently, accept your experience as it is. And this is something that really can be successfully trained in mindfulness training. And in fact, I'm a mindfulness trainer myself. So there's something that I do research on mindfulness, but I also train mindfulness. And mindfulness, initially, it was studied mainly in the domain of individual success and individual well-being. So how mindfulness may contribute to success in life, in work, in well-being, in performance at work, etc., etc. But in the past 5 years, there's really a very much attention to whether mindfulness can affect relationships. And the findings, including findings from our own lab, are very encouraging that it actually can contribute to better relationships. And one of the reasons or mechanisms might be that it really aids self-control. So what mindfulness does is that people, by training mindfulness, by paying attention to their own experiences, they may also be earlier on, in an earlier phase, aware of experiences that might actually hurt the relationship, including these destructive impulses that may arise. So sometimes a destructive impulse may arise, and usually in a mindless state, so to speak, it very automatically affects our behavior to the partner. So the impulse arises, and the next moment you behave based on the impulse. Now what mindfulness does is the impulse arises, you catch the impulse, you become aware of the impulse, you pay attention to the impulse, and instead of automatically behaving in line with the impulse, it gives you a little bit of more freedom. Okay, I have this impulse, and this is the impulse that there is, but then not act on it, and basically consciously decide to let it go, let the impulse pass away, because that's what an impulse usually does. It comes, and it also disappears
Come and
again.
go,
It comes and goes. And you don't need to act on it, but you have to be aware of the impulse. And that is what mindfulness can do. Now, mindfulness is an individual difference skill also. Some people simply are more mindful than other people. Some people are very impulsive and always react on the impulse. Other people may also have the impulse, but then pick up the impulse and decide not to act on it. So there's individual difference, again, in mindfulness that really helps relationships and relationship satisfaction, as a lot of research shows. But training mindfulness can really help you to monitor these destructive impulses and help you to act in a more pro-social manner towards your friends, towards your partner, towards colleagues, etc. etc. So that's very encouraging, I think, as an intervention tool for people low in self-regulation.
It's very interesting. So from what I understand, it's also we try to accept the impulse.
Exactly.
Not only aware, but like we accept it that it is maybe uncomfortable, or maybe we do have negative feeling about it, but by being more aware of it, embracing.
Exactly. And interestingly, in the very first, in the last episode, we started talking about also the ability to accept that relationships satisfaction comes and goes, and it goes with at a somewhat smaller level, at a more micro level. This is also what mindfulness entails. That negative experiences come and go, and also negative experiences in the relationship come and go. You can be aware of them, accept them for what they actually are, and then they will dissipate again. And that's all. We have published research with a PhD student of mine, Geza Kappen. People who are more mindful, they tend to be more accepting in the relationship, also towards the partner. So they are more likely to accept, for example, that the partner is not always the ideal partner, that the partner may sometimes act in a negative way, or that the partner has certain characteristics or traits that are not ideal, but not, it is what it is, and it is part of life, and it's part of my relationship life, and that in the end has a very strong effect on relationship satisfaction. So it's perhaps a little bit of a long answer, but
it gives very
insightful
good insight, about
that's
the
very
mindful.
insightful, because the mindfulness itself is actually working on our inhibitory control skills, right?
Well,
to inhibit something, you first have to notice it.
Notice
you first have to notice it, and or monitor it, or whatever term you are using. But that is where mindfulness works.
Because nowadays, I think because so much information goes to our mind, maybe our body is sitting, but our mind is as well, right? That's what happens in our culture nowadays.
Yes.
Fast information,
Exactly. And we in the previous podcast we talked about social media. And how it can negatively affect our relationships. And I also think that's part of the reason why mindfulness is so popular and successful, because in current society, people start to act more mindlessly than perhaps we used to do so in our past, and therefore it also can actually now benefit people if they become more mindful and basically pay attention to what they are doing, to other people, etc.
Talking about mindfulness, do you have maybe any tips for us, or maybe to our audience, about how we can train to be at least more mindful in our daily life?
Mindfulness can actually be trained, and again, it requires effort. Something like training mindfulness is not really easy. I sometimes compare it with learning to play the piano. Learning to play the piano is not fun always. My youngest daughter had piano lessons, and she found it awful. But practicing is not always nice because it doesn't go well. It's hard. It takes effort. But the more you do it, the more get into it and you become skilled in it. And it's very similar with mindfulness. So don't expect, you can, for example, you asked for a tip. There are many apps that give mindfulness instructions, for example, small mindfulness exercises. And what you could do, for example, start by practicing small mindfulness meditations every day for 10 minutes, and do that for I don't know a month. And I cannot make any promises, but don't expect that after one mindfulness session you will be more mindful in daily life. But it's really like practicing mindfulness requires repeated practice, and then you will may experience the benefits in daily life, because people may start to notice in daily life their experiences in an earlier stage.
It's definitely requires process and effort.
It is a process and it takes effort.
Talking about practice and process, what I noticed is also that people nowadays tend to expect instantly, very
instant answer,
instant
response,
instant problem solving.
Exactly.
I think it's also becoming a problem, because in reality not all things can be done like that.
Exactly. And I think it all comes together, right, in this podcast. What we also previously talked about, people also want to set their standards very high, want to be happy all the time. Want to have a super satisfying relationship all the time, every minute. If they start practicing mindfulness, they want to be mindful the next day or the next minute, and that actually undermines success in life, of course. There's a colleague of mine here, maybe well known to you, Asteria Kumulasari. We have done research in the Netherlands with Asteria. Asteria has done this research. Also show, for example, that when it comes to the people who really try to seek happiness, they sometimes do this because they really feel the pressure to seek happiness, because the whole society is shouting at you, you should
you have
be
to
happy.
be happy.
You have to be happy. You have to be happy. And the more you try to seek happiness, the less you get it. You know, happiness is not something that you can force onto you. So that's a very strong paradox in life.
And happiness is very unique to each one of us, right?
It
cannot be compared or be a standard, right?
Exactly.
So getting better at relationship does not mean learning how to get the other person do what we want to do, or how about what we want them to be, right?
Exactly. So it's not about wanting to change the other, but it's more about, you know, accepting that the other has certain characteristics that are not always super positive or not always ideal. And then, you know, the change, trying to change each other can actually lead to a lot of conflict and negativity in a relationship.
We can also work on our relationship by understanding first and being aware of our own needs and our partner needs, right? Okay. What's interesting about what we've been talking about the healthy relationships is also correlates with our individual differences. And does these individual differences correlate with our attachment that are formed in our early life?
Oh yes. So we've talked about self-regulation, and we talked about mindfulness, and attachment. Indeed, is the other factor that I think is extremely important when you think about individual differences. You know, relationships, and we talked about this in the first episode. One of the functions of relationships is that it really helps us to buffer our distress and to help us to cope with the stress. And so partners really provide our support system in our lives. And that's what we call the attachment system. So very much like, you know, children need their mother for support and to help them cope with fear and distress. That's in a mother-child relationship. Romantic partners basically do the same. You know, they are each other's support system or attachment system, and what we sometimes call a safe haven. You know,
my safest heaven.
And so if you feel stress, your partner may help you to reduce. By expressing your distress or expressing negative emotions, your partner may help you to reduce those negative emotions. Now that is how a healthy functioning attachment system operates. But there's indeed very strong individual differences. So some people, what we call the avoidant, who are more avoidantly attached, they really have a hard time trusting others, so that they don't want to depend on others in terms of their own well-being and their own stress, for example. So what people who are more avoidantly attached do is they, to the extent that they feel more stress, actually take,
distance.
Take more distance from a partner, because it's very scary for them to get to the partner, because they may actually be more hurt. To some extent it's quite sad that those avoidantly attached individuals do not seek out support, because in the end it would help them. I would say tend to be an avoidant person, and I also can really experience it myself, when I have stressful times at work, for example. I feel that I take more distance from my wife. And my wife can tell, and that can also influence the dynamic within the relationship, because my wife doesn't like it, of course, because what I do is I get grumpy, and I try to keep the distance between my wife and myself. Now that is what people who are more avoidantly attached do. Then there's also another group of people who are more what we call anxiously attached.
Yeah.
And what they tend to do is, put all their trust basically in others and really become overly dependent.
They always need the reassurance, right?
Exactly. That was the word. That's the key word. They always need to reassurance. Very often because they tend to have somewhat lower self-esteem, lower self-worth. So they are a little bit, they can be concerned about whether other people, including a romantic partner, for example, but also a friendship, for example, whether others will actually value you and whether other people are actually concerned about your well-being. So what they do is try to seek out reassurance again and again from others, and that for others can be quite, choking.
Tiring.
It can be tiring,
demanding,
very demanding, and what that does in a relationship that it drives the other partner away from you. That's. So those are very interesting dynamics in relationships based on attachment experiences.
Yeah.
And these differences in attachment indeed are based on past experiences you have. So if you have always had a very loving, very supportive parents, for example, you start to trust others, and that generalizes to other relationships. It's simply more easy for you to trust others and to rely on others when you need them. Yeah. If you were raised in a family, for example, where parents were not really paying attention to your needs, then people can become more avoidant and really don't trust others. And these type of dynamics, and it results in how it affects the relationship in the long run.
It's back again to the previous session, right? About the responsiveness of parents too.
Yes.
Indeed influence our attachment.
Yeah. Of course, the question may also be, maybe you also, I see the question coming. What can you do about it?
Yeah.
Or do you have
exactly.
any tips? And I think one thing is very important. To get insight into these processes, and there's one specific type of relationship counseling. It's called emotion-focused therapy, for example, and that's really based on attachment theory, helping partners to realize that what very often happens in their relationship and where it goes not so smooth and when it goes really difficult between them is it's really those attachment needs that are working and really can lead to all sorts of problems in a relationship. So to again, and their mindfulness also comes in. Being aware of those moments where you feel, oh, this is my attachment speaking. This is my. So, for example, the example I gave about myself, and I'm distressed at work, and I keep distance from my partner. When I'm actually aware of this, that still makes it somewhat difficult to behave in a different way, but at least I'm aware of it, and I can, and by being aware of it, I can communicate it to my partner. That's really the precondition to be able to communicate about it, and by communicating about it, my partner can become more responsive to me, and when my partner becomes more responsive to me, I have an experience, a positive experience about, hey, my partner is responsive after all. So, and if this happens repeatedly, then my avoiding tendency may actually start to become more secure and decrease, and I might become more securely attached in the relationship. That's the theory, and there's some research pointing at this, but I think that's very interesting.
It's all intercorrelated, right?
Yeah.
From our previous session.
Yes. Yeah, it's all
about being aware, being accept what our feelings is, because all feelings are valid, right?
Yes.
And
exactly. That's
and
a
how
very
to
good
accept
one.
that, and how we can communicate that if we have aware about that.
Yeah. Now it all comes together.
And also setting realistic expectations is also a big part, I think.
It's also definitely a big part.
Yeah, definitely in social media era where we can see couple goals in the social media. We need to realize that it's only the good side of the relationship, that they post on social media. So we need to realize it's not realistic to have a relationship without
always
any
the
conflict.
Good ones, right?
Only sunshine and rainbow is not realistic.
No, that's not realistic.
On the contrast, we also have so much learned about our partner, about the relationship when we have the downside too, right?
True. As you said before, the beauty in the relationship itself, the differences between me or us with our partner or our friends, make it more dynamic, the relationship.
And the dynamic in a relationship, that in and of itself is also very important to realize that conflict occurs not because your partner is to blame for it always, or because I'm to blame for it, but because there's a dynamic going on between partners.
It's not the one to blame, which one to blame.
Exactly. In 99% of the cases, it's really this dynamic between partners that is doing the things that you experience in the relationship.
Okay, so from the 4 episodes we have talked with Johan, we have learned that the importance of having a social relationship to our overall health, and also how to maintain healthy relationship, and also the significance of individual differences. So Johan, can you please give us some takeaways from these 3 episodes we have talked before?
Yes. Okay. Let me see. What is my takeaways would be: don't underestimate that you are a social animal, and that this fact is hugely important to realize, that you really need others to maintain a high level of well-being and health. And that is something you can, at least the realization of this can help you to actually seek out social contact, social medicine or social vitamins that we talked about.
Social snacking.
Social snacking. The other one is, the people who are more accepting in their relationship are more satisfied in the relationship. So it's not the objective outcomes they have that always determine the relationship satisfaction, but how they perceive it. Also another takeaway is really the excitement that we talked about last year, that because that's so applicable to everybody's own life, and it's easy to do. And then finally, if there are individual differences and you recognize this, you feel, I'm low in self-regulation and low in mindfulness, and maybe I'm insecurely attached. Help what to do now. We all fall in a range of individual differences, and it's not the case that you're doomed if you're low in self-regulation or low mindfulness, but it's good to realize that you may not have all the skills to have good relationships, but also that there's something you can do about it, or try to do about it, and be friendly to yourself by trying to do that. So not try to be the best person you can be the next day, but also accept and have some self-compassion that we're not the ideal persons there are, and just like no relationship is perfect, no person is perfect, and we accepting the fact that you're not perfect.
Yes, totally agree.
So the first step to have a healthy relationship is awareness and acceptance.
I think so.
Okay, it is very interesting 3 episodes of podcast where we talk about healthy relationship. For me personally, I've learned that relationship itself is a very dynamic and interesting topic. Very complex, but very interesting as well. As you probably have mentioned before, for some people maybe relationship is just just a basic thing, but it is actually very dynamic, and we can learn very much about relationship itself.
So it's the most important thing in life.
True.
It's all intercorrelated with every aspects of our life.
Yes, I completely agree. Hopefully it is also insightful to all of you. That is all for our podcast talking about healthy relationship. Hope you enjoy it, and see you on the next episode of podcast of Faculty of Psychology Universitas Pajajaran.
Thank you.
Thank you.